Well, with the ever-evolving technology landscape, ladies and gentlemen, and the voracious appetite of the organizations to recruit skilled workforce, the ever-growing company must have a blueprint, you would agree, to say hire, and not just hire, but develop and retain the pool of resources. Well, good tech talent especially is like a mantra for success, and to decode this mantra, we have someone for whom you all will have to notch it up in terms of your applauses. Please give it up for the VP and Managing Director, Asia Pacific from Udemy Business. Give it up for Peter Kokkinos. Very, very good evening to you, Peter. How are you feeling? How's the vibe like? They're all yours.
What a really nice introduction. Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here. India was the last place that I visited before the world shut down, and it was the first place I visited when the borders opened up in Australia in March, and this is my second trip back. And I think that speaks to the fact that India for us, for Udemy, is an incredibly important market, and I'm just incredibly happy to be here with you all today, face to face in particular. It's something that I don't think I'll ever take for granted again, the opportunity to see people and meet face to face. So thank you for this opportunity. So as we talked about, this is a blueprint to retain and develop tech talent. I'm going to try and take a slightly different approach, but typically the domain of talent and talent development is typically something that the HR and L&D organisations have had to focus on, but that has changed completely in recent times, and the need to retain and retain important, costly talent and develop that talent has been put back into right on the ground with the leaders, you guys, the leaders of these organisations. It's no longer someone else's problem, and realistically, we need to be thinking about how we are going to, as individuals and as groups, address some of these insurmountable, potentially, challenges that we have. Oops, excuse me. So over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to try and give you an insight into some of the important areas that we need to be thinking about as leaders, you guys as tech leaders, as it relates to tech talent and obviously tech skills. Now, hoping that'll work. There we go. So why does learning matter for tech teams? And look, it seems like a pretty obvious answer to this question, but there are areas that we're not always thinking about that can have a significant impact on your business. And they're the areas that I want to focus on today. Not just talking about specific tech courses or teaching people how to code or how to do their specific jobs, but looking at it at a broader level. And as senior leaders in tech, it's now more important than ever, as I said before, for you guys to personally create a culture of learning that helps you develop the skills and retain employees. It's not enough to hope that someone else is going to fix the problem. We're seeing unprecedented disruption in the market around talent retention and skills acquisition, and most of the learning and recruiting teams that we're speaking to are completely underwater. We're not going to be able to lean on them for support. And realistically, what we're also seeing is there are no teams in any organisation that are more challenged today than tech teams are in this area. So I'm going to share with you some data and some data just to see what's happening in the industry and highlight the extent of the problem, but also not just focus on tech skills and the in-demand skills, but there's some really important areas that we should be aware of. So we're seeing this continuous change putting business at risk. We've had to live through this continuous change for many, many years, but it's been accelerated, obviously, in recent times. And I'm going to cover some of these off in more detail, but let me just look at them at a high level first to set the context. The first topic here is about burnout, and I know you guys, probably some of you in the room have felt it, but even before we start looking at all these other challenges, we have to contend with the fact that 86% of our best performers are at risk of burning out. And it makes sense if you think about it, because we're struggling to recruit talent, and the talent that we do have, we're struggling to get the skills into them that they need. And when we don't have the skills that they need, that creates a skill gap. And what we tend to do, what we tend to see happen, is that the high performers are the people that then go and fill that skill gap. And that's putting pressure on them, and of course putting pressure on our ability to retain them and to make them feel engaged in their business. If you start losing your best performers to burnout, the problem's only ever going to get bigger. So I'll share with you some areas of focus to help a little bit further on. But the other interesting statistic here is 57% of employees left their job because of their managers. We woke up one day and our teams were spread across the country and spread across the world. And in some cases, I'm sure, I've experienced this, I'm sure in some cases you would know, you've hired people that you've never met. You've hired people in the last 2 years that you've never physically been able to get in front of. And that's changed the way leaders have been able to lead. We're asking them to physically change the way that they're leading, and that's putting pressure on their ability to engage their staff and help develop and grow their staff. And really, how many of your leaders are actually ready? If you think about it, if you think about the challenges they're experiencing as people are starting to come back into work or starting to work in a virtual environment, you need to ask yourselves, do my leaders have the skills that they need? And we need to make sure our managers are ready for today's times, not with the skills that they had in the past. And lastly, the biggest mistake I see organisations making today is not focusing on career mobility. With all of the effort that we put into developing skills, the idea that we don't focus on helping our staff see a future in our organisation is crazy to me. It's little wonder that 48% of the workforce, global workforce, is actively looking for roles today, actively looking for new roles today. And we know that, and we'll touch on this statistic a little further, if you can find career mobility opportunities for your staff, they're twice as likely to stay in the organisation. And again, just another measure, another way of making sure that while we're putting effort into attracting these staff and skilling up our staff, we need to be putting effort into retaining that staff. Otherwise, we're going to go back into that terrible cycle. Even if that 48% was 20 or 30%, that's a significant risk to your business, to your teams, to the projects that you're trying to deliver on. And it's one that we need to put emphasis on now if we want to start to continue to be successful in our businesses. So let's look at it in a little bit more detail. I'm going to read this blurb because it shares the point really well. But back in May 2019, the World Health Organization, which I know some of us are very familiar with, after the pandemic hit, they officially recognised and defined burnout as an occupational phenomenon. And since then, and we may have all heard this, since then organisations have been trying to address the symptoms and causes of the problem, but statistically we're seeing it's getting worse. And one of the areas that we saw, as you can see up here, in 2020 and 2021, we saw a whopping increase in between 580% and 990%, depending on the topics, increases in your employees globally through our platforms searching for topics that relate to burnout. So if you think about it, time management, focus mastery, self-discipline, memory, goal achievement, these are areas that we struggled to get tech people to even consider doing 2 years ago. It was almost impossible to get them to engage content like this. They were focused in tech content. Today, we're seeing a huge spike in these areas. So what's that telling us? It's telling us that their jobs are becoming more stressful. And they are proactively looking for ways to reduce the stress and to be more productive. So if your staff is lacking in these skills, then you're putting them at risk of not having the skills that they need to perform their jobs properly. And ultimately, we get to that point where burnout and 86% of our top performers start to get the risk. So realistically, the opportunity falls with us as leaders to take some time to help our teams identify these areas of need and encourage them to help them be more productive and to develop their skills in these areas. And if we can do that, we can reduce the risk in our business. As I mentioned before, 57% of employees leave a company because of their manager. I want to show of hands just quickly. How many of you have left your job or thought about leaving your job because of poor leadership? Show of hands. Only one. The rest of you are 2, 3. A few more going up. So statistically, 57%. If you think about that, that's not unusual, and that's obviously, these are additional pressures that we can address. We don't have to create these problems for ourselves. The global market are also already creating problems that we're looking to address. We really need to make sure that we're putting our effort into developing our managers. Now we're asking managers to lead in a completely different environment than anyone's ever experienced before. And you need to ask yourself, are you confident that your leaders, that your managers have the skills that they need to lead in an environment today? One bad leader can have a significant effect on the professional and personal lives of your teams. And the financial implications of 57% of your workforce being at risk is something I don't think that any organisation should be gambling with. That is have a significant impact on your business. So tech skills are important, and we need to continue to deliver them, but leadership skills are the foundation of success in any business, and one we all need to focus on. And we can talk later, you can come to our booth and we can talk to you about how we can help you there. Just to reinforce this point a little more, managers account for at least 70% of variance in employee engagement scores. That's a huge variance in employee engagement. That's a massive influence when we think about it. That's how important good leadership is to the engagement levels of all of the employees across the world and across your businesses. And while 83% of organisations believe that they have, that it's really important to develop their leaders across all levels, only 5% of businesses in the world have leadership programs that focus across all levels of business. So leadership is saying it, we're talking about it, we're acknowledging that it is a challenge, but not many of us are actually really doing what we should be doing to the levels that we need to be doing to support that. Gartner estimates that about 20% of employees have the necessary skills to do both their current role and future careers. So 80% of your leaders don't have the skills that they need to lead effectively, putting 57% of your employees at risk. And that's something that we really need to focus on. If you want to have sorry, let me just get that. So we've all heard about the Great Resignation. I think that's something that's been bandied around a lot lately. It's shrinking talent pools, it's increasing hiring costs, it's expanding skill gaps and disrupting productivity across the world. That's clear, and the evidence is clear that employees are quitting en masse all over the world and due to burnout, due to poor leadership, due to lack of career progression, or an opportunity just to lift their eyes and look for new opportunities or look for more money. And so we know that this is a challenge, but it's not an insurmountable challenge. Career progression or career mobility has been the number one category affecting employee retention for the last 10 years. So this isn't a new problem. But if you think about it in your organisations, how many of you in this room have a clear path for what your next role looks like in the organisation you have today? How many people in your teams have a clear path of where they can start and where they can go for new roles in your organisation today? We can't hire our way out of this problem. We need to make sure that we retain the staff that we've got, otherwise we're going to be in incredible trouble. The average time to fill a position is around 42 days. So you lose 10 people, you've got 42 days before you can get them on board again, and recruiting expenses have gone up 40%. Sorry, that's not true. The recruiting expenses can cost up to 40% of an employee's base salary. So that's a significant cost. And then talent vacancies and skill gaps can cost up to $98 per day in lost productivity, and it takes an employer an average of 12 weeks to become fully productive, depending on their roles. So again, you're just taking 3 steps back to take 1 step forward if we're losing our top talent out the door. Additionally, it's not just the cost. It affects morale. It increases your skill gaps. There's a loss of culture. You have the loss of profitability. There's so many additional challenges that we face. And we know that showing an employee an opportunity to reskill or upskill in a new role makes them twice as likely to stay in your organisation. So it's just something, I'm not going to say it's a simple thing, but it's certainly something that we need to be thinking about, and it makes sense it makes sense working for an organization, really, for me, is like a relationship. And if you're in a relationship that you don't see a future in, you're not going to stick around in that relationship. And it's the same thing with our employees. If they don't see a future, there's an opportunity for them to raise their eyes and look for another role. And we know the challenges that brings. So, as leaders, it's our responsibility to help our employees see a future in our organizations. That's really what we should all be focused on and thinking about. We need to help our employees engage with future-focused learning paths. So thinking about, this is where you can go. Here are the learning paths. Here are the learning and development opportunities we can give you to stay and grow and help us develop and grow our business, and to promote career progression and mobility. So, 1 minute to go. There's some really good news. I've got a question I can answer for you in a second. The good news is that Udemy is helping thousands of organizations implement future-focused talent programs like this and helping them retain talent from within. We do that a lot for thousands of companies. We've got our amazing Udemy team outside. You can come and visit us at the booth. We've got the largest tech content in the world as well, so we can help you there. So we've got an incredibly passionate team, an incredibly skilled team that can help you. And if any of this has resonated with you at all, we'd love to help. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks.